we've started working on this and thinking about this, but bungees have been around in the slacklining world for now about 2 or 3 years, I think, and they're just everywhere. So let's talk about how we can make sure they're certified, and also because it's something that is in no other sport, is really a specific gear for highlining. So it's not like anchors where we use fan sets. This is something that needs to happen pretty fast, in my opinion. So just first a little overview of what bungees can be used for. And the first case that comes to mind is Freestyle Highline, where now at high level, like everybody's using bungees. So I've put a link here. So this link is to the SlackX Instagram page, which features lots of the top athletes of the world and what they can do with the rigs that have bungees on, which wouldn't be possible otherwise. So have a look at this if you're curious. Second possibility where you can use bungees is there are lots of sports that had fallen out of use because they were too short. They were not really interesting for people doing freestyle, or like even not at high level. But now people can do freestyle on 40 meters, and that opens a lot more possibilities in towns, around cities. Yeah. Indoor lines, because you can have indoor lines. It's rarely you can get 70-meter indoor, but you can get 30-meter indoor, and that can be really nice in case of shows. So for example, I'm thinking about Uldus, who perform shows which have usually a bit of freestyle highline in the show, and sometimes they're asked to perform in a place where they can rig only 30-meter. So they used to do it with very stretchy webbing, but it was never really satisfactory. So again, if you want to have a look at, so the link I put is for this page, where you can see they rigged a line here between on the medieval fortress, no, on the fortress, and you can see the bungee in the lower corner here, for example. Beginner lines are nicer, even if they're not too long, and they have a softer catch when you can add bungees. And more recently, Kolya, so he's one example, but there's several people who've been doing and trying to do a trickline on shorter setups with lower tensions as well, and they can do it thanks to bungees. It's not the same bungees that use in freestyle highline. They have different stretch characteristics, obviously, but it's the same idea. So here again, I put a link to this, and I'm not sure you can see the video well, but like here he's on 10 meter long and he's performing butt flips. So yeah, bungees are everywhere around. The last point, I show an experiment that Slacktivity did when they did the backup fall with bungees, and you can see like if you want to read the whole thing and see their full report, the forces were really not high because there was bungees that caught the backup. All right, so this is the motivation behind starting the work on certification of bungees. Let's have a look at the few bungees producers we have that are ISA partner. We have SlackX, who started developing the bungees. Then Balance Community also, they got an agreement to like copy basically the same technique that SlackX is using. Slacktivity is producing their own bungees, which are, I think, easier to produce, but also more versatile. Well, like this is up to the customer to decide which one they want to use, but all of these are around, and these people are ISA partner. These companies are ISA partners, so we should start working on making a certification available for them. And I have been talking with Yoshi from SlackX to prepare this presentation. There is big challenges in trying to certify bungees. Mostly, well, we have only 2 different types at the moment, but they're already quite different. And one point that you can think of is that if you want to use bungees at the anchor, you think, okay, then the bungee should follow the 48 kilonewton that the ISA 21 Highline system standard requires for the anchor. But the thing is that it's the bungees, by the way that they work and how they, if they want to be stretchy, they have to be slightly weaker than that. So, for example, the breaking strength of the bungees from SlackX or Balance Community is around 20 kilonewton, if I'm not mistaken. And for the selectivity, they announced 3 kilonewton per rope. So if you do 4 loops, which is 8 strands, then you have 24 kilonewton. So it's way below the 48 kilonewton that we ask for anchor material in general in the standard. By the way, we will need to add the bungee in the Highline system standard at some point as well. The brake tests of the bungees are complicated also, like just because if you need to pull something that has 400% extension, it starts at 1 meter, you need a machine that's not standard. So a lot of challenges. But if we think back to what is the safety feature, the safety feature is the thing we want to certify. We want to certify that they don't compromise the safety of the rig. Then what you think of is that bungees limit the forces in an installation, like we've seen in the selectivity experiment. And the goal is to certify that the bungees accomplish that force limiting feature when they are used properly. And then if you think, okay, then the bungee limits the force to 4 or 5 kilonewton, then it's reasonable that it will break at 20 kilonewton because this leaves 4 times safety margin. So let's have a look at this then. And already I have sort of a proposition for what we should work towards, and we should start a working group with the ISA Safety Commission to work towards the bungee label. So the goal of this is to ensure that the bungees work in the design range, and when you have bungees, you have to think of them as they're working, like they're providing a lot of extension between some tension and another tension. So we want to look at what should be the maximum extension of the bungees and what should be the tension at that length. So if I have, for example, I have a practical example here. Let me stop sharing my screen and then you can all look at my video. I don't know if I can put myself in big or just, well, let's try like this. So here I have an elastic band from like exercising elastic band, and I have a piece of, so if I'm taking this elastic band and I'm looking at it, I want to be working in the range where the stretch is, there's a good stretch, but it's not fully stretched out and then it gets weaker. And if I think, okay, let's put a piece of backup next to it that is in that range, that works well in that range, that limits to this maximum extension that I want to get. What happens when you think in a highline rig, then if somebody's bouncing on the line and it reaches the tension where this backup gets under tension, then there's going to be like the bounce is not going to be nice, the person is not going to enjoy the line, and they're going to think, okay, then something is wrong in my rigging. So my suggestion is really to do exactly this, to specify that bungees have to be rigged with a backup that limits their extension to the correct length where they have some, they hold some tension. So then you know that your line, every time your bungee is rigged and the backup is not tight, you know your tension is below some tension that is depending on the quality of the bungee. And then we can require that the bungee should hold. Oh, I have to start my sharing again. Okay. Good. Then you should we should have that the bungee should hold at least 4 times the tension at the length that is specified. They have to be rigged with the backup of the correct length, and the backup also has to hold 4 times that tension. Okay, the number 4 here is completely arbitrary. Could be 5, could be 6.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
If you have this extension limiter, the measured force, the maximum force in the bungees would be dependent on the number of reps in the bungees, right?
Yes.
So how does this come into any correlation in the standard?
Sorry, again, the last.
Yeah, if I have like 2 reps, obviously my whole bungee is lots of longer, and I need another limiter compared to if I have 3 or 4 reps. So I only have like half the length. So I would, as a manufacturer, I would have to provide like 3 or 4 limiters for each number of reps.
Not necessarily. You could provide a limiter that you say you have to fold it. If you fold the bungee, you have to fold the limiter.
Okay.
Does this make sense?
This makes sense. The forces
with the other type of like I think you're talking about like more like the type of bungees from Selectivity. They're like really wrapped around, but it's the same thing with the SlackX balance community bungees, where you can sometimes fold them in 2, then you just fold the backup as well in 2.
The forces would change with the numbers of reps.
Yes.
So is this in any kind taken into account in this
scenario? So that like you're getting just ahead of what I was getting in the presentation. So maybe if you still have questions in the obviously these are all talking points, and we need to work on this, but it was the plan to talk about it.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
A big part of the certification would be in the user manual, and making sure that the bungees are rigged properly. So that's what I was getting at. Like if you, this was, yeah. No, that's not it. There. So this way of certifying bungees requires that they're rigged in a very specific configuration, and for that it's about education of the user and a good user manual. So the backup of the correct length and breaking strength has to be provided with, and the backup also has to be adjustable. So if it's double wrapped, then you double wrap the backup, for example. I think that seems to me like a pretty simple solution. If you say your bungee should extend to no more than 4 meters, and you provide a 4-meter span set with it, and if it's folded in 2, you fold the 4-meter span set. That's like we can discuss it, but I think that's a reasonable solution. In the manual, also something that's about safety. So we've seen in the selectivity experiment what happens if you cut the main line. The backup fold was safe, and the backup fold was safe because we were rigging in the sorry, we shouldn't say safe as we've seen in the presentation yesterday, but the backup fold was soft.
I would like to add one significant point to this. What we've seen in the selectivity test is that it was in a certain range of a maximum peak load. Yeah. If I remember correctly, 58 kilograms Highliner fell into it. So what I have not seen yet is like 90 or 100 kilogram person falling into it. So I would propose to take all these selectivity tests with a grain of caution.
Yeah. But the main point I wanted to make here is that in the rigging, and this should be known by everybody who owns bungees already, like the backup has to be attached to a master point that's at the front of the bungees, and then there's an extra backup for the bungees. It shouldn't be that the backup is just taped to the main line and attached behind the bungees, because in that case, if you have a failure anywhere in the main line, your bungees are no longer in the system, and you're doing a very harsh backup pull directly on the anchor. So that should be also in the manual, not with these drawings. I think we can find a bit better drawings, but I made them yesterday.
I have another point about this then. What we haven't seen so far as I know, is valid rescue scenario over this extended master point to the anchor?
That's that's a fair point. Yeah.
Repeat for that bit because I don't hear.
What did you say? Yeah, it's a solvable issue, I think.
But should this be part of the standard in any form to make sure that these connectors that are inserted into the system are somehow
no, so
possible to overcome in a rescue scenario?
So this would have more space in my opinion, in the Highland system standard, saying that, well, we could add that in the Highland system standard already, that you shouldn't have any connection between two, like if you have two webbing and you have a connection between two webbing, it shouldn't be too fat that even a kootenai cannot go over it. So like, I mean, we all rig like this because we don't want to have to stop and get the leash over by hand. But yeah, that's also something maybe it's worth adding to the. Yeah, there is a comment from Leighton saying that even in the second case, if there was a connection in the main line, it would be softer. But yeah, it's always adding connections, mainline backup, like we are doing here, is always making the backup falls softer. All right. This is one more thing to lower the force. This is debatable, obviously, because sometimes in like beginner lines, you might want to just rig with one bungee on one side and have the other side easily accessible. People can get in the line more easily if there is no bungee on the end, as you were saying. But I think it's like having bungees on both ends. Make sure that even in the event of one bungee failing, you still have the other one for make still a soft catch. And then in the manual, obviously, a list of approved connectors and all the standard things that go in the manual. So here, for example, I found that on the Selectivity website, they have, or when they sell the bungee, they sell very short span sets with it, which go very well around them. Other bungees would use soft shackles because they have terminations with loops or quick links, or yeah, this all the stuff we need to work on as a working group to make the manual complete. Testing, because this is what the label would be about. This could be a testing protocol, like it's a first measure the tension at what the manufacturer would say is the maximum extension, and you measure the tension. So if the maximum extension is 2 meters, you pull the bungees to 2 meters of length, measure the tension there, and then increase the tension up to 4 times the tension at the maximum extension, and the bungees should hold. So this could be a challenge because of the high stretch of the bungees. Some bungees have integrated, like the SlackX balance community have integrated backup system in them, like a Dyneema piece that doesn't extend more than just a tiny bit more than the maximum extension that should be used. And so that's pretty easy to get to 4 times the tension and maximum extension. And the bungee should hold at that tension. I don't think we need to do a full break test. We don't need to fully break the bungees. We just check that they hold at the tension that is required. And same thing for the backup. The last point was, do we want a braking strength? Do we want to really break the bungees? I'm not sure. Like if you look at climbing gear, all soft goods, they're rated to 22 kilonewton, for example, and that's minimum strength, and they all just hold this, and you don't really need to know that they actually break at 28 or 32, and usually they break quite a bit higher than the 22 kilonewton for soft goods, at least.
What I'd like to add here would be maybe holding that force for a certain period of time. What I just did is certifying textile goods after CE, and this included holding the force for, I think, 90 seconds.
Yeah. There is a big bunch of experiments to be done before like always with the ISA Safety Commission, we are trying to reduce the cost for the manufacturer to get their product certified. And it'd be nice if we can reduce the number of tests that are required to certify bungees. And for example, if we go back to, so up here with the selectivity example, you see that they have several bungees, but they're all like just different length of rope that is put in there. And it's all of this, it's all the same material, it's just made with different length. So can we just test one and trust that the math work for the other bungees, or do we really need to test each bungee? This is a question we should do some experiments beforehand, see if it's reliable, that it works in general, or if it's not, then there needs to be tests for each configuration. The SlackX balance community bungees are produced. They have different number, like they have different versions of bungees which have different number of wraps inside with rubber. We should experiment also to see if we can trust that the math work, or if we need to do like each version has to be certified independently, which would be a lot more expensive. A few extra challenges. Bungee behavior depends a lot on temperature and humidity, so we need to test in the controlled setting, but we also need to know how these factors affect the bungees. There is also the difference between the slow pull, which would be what happens in the lab, and dynamic pull, which is what happens in real life. And like the tension would get higher with the same extension in a dynamic pull. And so it would be nice to make a series of experiments, maybe at a drop tower if somebody has access to one. That would be that's something that we need to do, and also see how bungees age. So at the moment we have a few bungees that are on perma rigs around the world. Let's see how we can collect knowledge from the manufacturers who already have seen that, and go for it. And then some extra point that we discussed when we were talking about this with SlackX was that they're interested in having standardized performance testing, but this is like super expensive and this is super complex in my opinion. So let's see, this is just for the future. So if you have any questions, I'm done. Like the next steps obviously are creating this working group with the ISA Safety Commission, with the partners that are already producing bungees or that are interested.
I'd like to be part of this working group.
Oh,
and,
well,
and I have one question. How would this performance test that Yoshi proposed look like, and how could this be standardized? Because I think we don't have any other standard so far that compares performance. I think all the standards that we have so far are only focused on safety issues.
Yeah, I'm just here. So the idea is basically the same as like performance tests for webbings. So going to like the working range where the webbing or the bungees are designed for. So if I say I want to freestyle on this setup, I have roughly like forces from 2 to 4 kilonewton, let's say. And then basically cyclic loading this, like going from 2 to 4 and back to 2 and up and down, and like then measuring like the stretch over this force. And then also reaching like roughly, that's like then the question, like in which way this is possible, to also reach like a speed which is comparable to freestyling. So in the best case, you have like a cycle within like 3 or 4 seconds, but that might be challenging for some practice machines to get like this fast cycles, but then still seeing maybe checking if there is the chance to get like a good performance setup or something like this where you can actually like test it and then also compare it, like if you're going like quite a bit slower but not super slow, if you still have comparable numbers, and then you can actually really see how much is a webbing stretching out between 2 and 4 kilonewton, and how much is a bungee stretching out between 2 and 4 kilonewton for this version or so on. That
Okay, so as a
you know in your setup how much extension do you get into it, and then you can finally start some math and calculate stuff, and you can calculate for your specific spot with your specific webbing, with the specific bungees, how will be the bounce.
So as a performance test, you understand kind of generating stretch curve and hysteresis.
Exactly, hysteresis. So basically not a stretch curve how we used to do it, like slow pull, because that's, in my opinion, pretty much useless, but actually having a stretch curve in a specific range, which is actually interesting for performance of how it feels to bounce on a webbing.